Get a seat at the table, Emily Blunt. Emily Blunt has earned her spot on Hollywood's A-list thanks to a successful career and the freedom to select the projects that are important to her. Oppenheimer, the most anticipated movie of the summer, stars Oppenheimer, who discusses parenthood, working behind the camera, and the enduring allure of the big screen with Frances Hedges. For being late, Emily Blunt is apologizing. She is only 5 minutes late for our Zoom call, which is completely unnecessary given the usual barrage of time and location changes that are typical of celebrity interviews. However, politeness is one of her most endearingly English characteristics, along with her sense of humor. She laughs. Last night, I was just talking to a buddy about how much we enjoy the Great British Bake Off. It's the irreverence of it, some of the innuendos over here you'd never get away with. Over here refers to Brooklyn, where Blunt has lived since 2016 with her husband, actor and director John Krasinski, and kids Hazel and Violet, who are 9 and 7, respectively. 8 years after being sworn in as a citizen, she acknowledges that she was seduced by America's great qualities despite the difficulties that comes with having a dual identity. I must be correct. My children and my husband are also Americans. 3 of my all-time favorite people are represented there. She yearned for London after a spell in La, but Brooklyn gave her the sense of belonging she had been missing. She declares, I feel very at home here. With all the spontaneity and the reality of being in a big city, it's like a village inside of New York. It's almost like being on Sesame Street, she continues, because so many of her close pals reside in the area. One such friend is Sienna Miller, who she was seen hugging on the Met Gala red carpet just a few days prior to our conversation. Blunt claims, she's one of the individuals I cling to, living here, who showed up at the occasion in a Michael Kors creation inspired by Karl Lagerfeld, which had sequin-encrusted satin slacks underneath a matching overskirt and a lace shirt with a black organza bow. I absolutely love fashion, but it's not really my world, she adds abruptly. I occasionally feel a little outside of the group because it can be rather scary. She feels more at ease thanks to the gala's costume custom. Everyone there is acting, which makes the performance less self-reflective and more performative, which I adore. After all, Blunt is by nature a performer. Her many roles have included a strong-willed mother in A Quiet Place, and its sequel, a principled FBI agent in Sicario, and a no-nonsense Mary Poppins. Also in the current television miniseries The English, a brave noblewoman surviving the desolate landscape of the American West. Her most famous future role will see her take on a difficult yet interesting character in Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, which explores the tale of how the atomic bomb was created. She plays Kitty Oppenheimer, the irate wife of physicist Cillian Murphy. She certainly didn't fit the 1950s housewife ideal, and yet she was forced to spend her days chained to an ironing board in Los Alamos, New Mexico, which must have driven her insane. She has a monumental presence, according to Blunt, who also calls her. She was a fantastic scientist herself, but she was constrained by the time she lived in, which is why I found her to be so fascinating to play. Many women a few generations before me were not permitted to juggle a profession and children because it was expected that they make a choice, and if they did, they would be looked down upon. Even today, I see women in their 70s whose entire identity has been consumed by parenthood. Once that is complete, there is this feeling of, well, who am I and how do I reclaim myself? When I walk onto set that first day, I still feel paralyzed with terror. Then I leave and have that feeling of being possessed by someone. Blunt prepared for the role with her trademark fervor since she is familiar with the difficulties of juggling family and career achievement. For me, the process of entering character is quite inner, she claims. It's all about the tiny things that add up to something. Despite her experience, she still finds it difficult to begin a significant undertaking like this. When I walk onto set that first day, I still feel paralyzed with terror. Then I take off and experience what it feels like to be in someone else's possession. She and Murphy had previously worked together on A Quiet Place Part 2, which aided in their chemistry. Murphy is effusive in his praise of Blunt's fierce intelligence when he contacts me from Dublin to discuss his experience working with her. Emily has that, both intellectually and emotionally. He asserts, she is not only a fantastic actress but also a wonderful, considerate person. It is obvious that Blunt values her role in this movie greatly. A vintage gin bottle with her character's name on it and a history book, both presents from Christopher Nolan, are among the keepsakes from the set that she occasionally pans her camera about to show me in her home room. I've always felt he's groundbreaking in the way he's able to create these big themes that are meaningful on the most visually stunning scale, she exclaims. He has utterly transformed cinema for everyone. She experienced the lack of the large screen during the pandemic intensely, as did many others in her field, and Nolan more than anybody crafts movies that are meant to be seen in theaters with surround sound. Of course I'm a big fan of streaming, but when it first entered the ecosystem, I was worried we were losing the sense of event and ceremony. That thing of going out and putting your phone down and getting immersed in a world with a roomful of strangers," she adds. "I have so many distinct memories from my upbringing that it makes me very nostalgic." Blunt had a nice upbringing. She was one of 4 siblings who remain close to this day. One of her sisters is staying with her in Brooklyn the week that we chat. Blunt was educated in southwest London by a barrister father and an actress-turned-teacher mother. She had a childhood stutter, so acting helped her regain her fluency. Despite having no clear plans to make acting her career, at the age of 18, thanks to an audition for the late director Peter Hall, she found herself on stage with Judi Dench in a West End production of The Royal Family. According to Blunt, "I was completely awestruck and starstruck by the whole thing. I distinctly recall thinking, 'My God, Pierce Brosnan is here, this is crazy.'" When in Judy's dressing room each night, she took a lot of advice from Dench's positive fame attitude, which she described as "there's nothing tortured about her, she wears her success so lightly." Blunt also does this, presumably as a result of her lack of stargazing as a young actor. She says, "I quite liked auditioning, because I didn't feel like my whole life depended on it," and she makes an effort to avoid thinking too much about her present A-list status. "I completely dissociate from being on a billboard when I see myself there. Who is that?" I ask, and I can imagine my kids acting in a similar manner. They might remark, "Oh, there's Mama," but it's not that exciting to them. They look forward to me picking them up from school so we can go swimming. Blunt prioritizes spending time with her girls and has a hard rule about never being away from them for longer than a fortnight. Because even though kids are resilient and accustomed to this unusual life, she explains, "It's still hard on them when I have to go away." She recently finished production on David Yates' Netflix conspiracy drama Pain Hustlers, about a single mother who gets caught up in a criminal enterprise run by a failing pharmaceutical company, as well as the upcoming action movie The Fall Guy, which also stars Ryan Gosling, after a string of major projects, including Oppenheimer. She's made the decision to skip the rest of the year. "I don't want to compromise on key aspects of the girl's day, such as, will you wake me up, take me to school, pick me up, and put me to bed?" She says, "I simply want to be able to respond with a resounding yes. For me, being able to do that is like taking a deep breath." She is aware that the film industry is not always fair to women and that she is fortunate to have the option to step aside. "I want to scream, don't do it." When someone says, "My daughter wants to be an actress," she screams, because it's a tough business and it sometimes disappoints. Many people advise you to not take things personally, but when you're being assessed only on your appearance, it's impossible not to. You just have to put up with that aspect of things. Blunt has managed to keep her business afloat by avoiding social media, refusing the urge to check online reviews, and taking lessons from the past. "I think I've just gotten better at dancing the dance," she says. Less cynically, she finds solace in the fact that discussions about equal pay have now become commonplace, enabling women to freely advocate for their rights. Ambition is healthy and shouldn't be viewed negatively, according to her. It is important to realize your value and what you can contribute to a project, and to never apologize for doing well. The good news is that it's less common for women joining the field now to be restricted to a single discipline. Blunt affirms that there are other professions besides acting that one can pursue. She herself is expanding her professional horizons. Her husband is renowned for crying with excitement when he first heard her practicing for Into the Woods because she is already an amazing vocalist in addition to an actress. For the film The English, in which she also starred, she recently received her first official producer credit. She explains, "I've always loved the Western genre because it's founded on cruelty, toxic masculinity, and retribution, and the isolation of the setting is horribly dramatic." As the writer and director Hugo Blick put it, "This idea was brought to me in its embryonic stage, and I lived with it and worked with him every step of the way." The miniseries is one of her proudest accomplishments as a result. When you have creative control over what you're creating, things become passion projects. Because I didn't have any distance from it, The English felt like a newborn to me, which made it much more terrifying when it appeared. You have this thing where you want to love and protect it, but you don't know what the wolves are going to think. Fortunately, they concurred, and Blunt received a Screen Actors Guild nomination for her work. Blunt has already optioned a short tale by the well-known Irish author Claire Keegan, who is represented by her sister Felicity, a literary agency, and is enthusiastic about the prospect of bringing it to life on screen. Additional producer positions are expected to follow. As for working with Krasinski again, she says she would be thrilled to do because I have so much respect for John as a director on the third installment of the Quiet Place trilogy. She still wants to be a director, but she doesn't feel particularly pressured to start while her kids are still small. She appears confident in herself and unconcerned about her job path at the age of 40. The burn of my 40s will surely come up with me eventually, but I haven't noticed it yet, she grins. It might be because I've moved into a self-generating stance and feel in charge rather than just waiting for the next thing to happen. She is still driven by the search for or the creation of strong, real-life female characters that routinely defy preconceptions. Blunt says with feeling, I get annoyed when I'm told, she's a badass. That's not exciting to me because that's not real life. I adore the feeling of being a fish out of water, struggling, and recklessly clawing my way out. When they are in over their heads, women are heroic. We can be sure that Blunt will always be on our screens as long as there are roles of that kind coming her way. She declares, I really don't want to stop acting. I love it so much. I have this thing inside of me that only this job can feed. Certainly, I entered this job casually, but it has turned into a wild love affair. May her passion last a long time.